It's time to spotlight how AI can assist in stock research, specifically to process real-time news flow. With an ASA, an AI stock analyst built specifically to replace large parts of traditional research workflows. Joining us now to discuss, Peter Andersen, the Chief Investment Officer and founder at Andersen Capital Management. Peter, thank you so much for being with us today. Now, I love the honesty in the notes that you sent over to tell us a little bit about your assistant here. You said openly that you have always been skeptical of the AI hype. And I would love to know what has changed your mind now that you are fully backing an AI stock analyst.
Well, a couple of things, certainly. And good morning to everybody. So, I've always been skeptical of AI from the very beginning. But, I think it was because, if you remember, when it was first introduced, there was a lot of romantic hype about how it's going to replace the human brain and it's going to replace all kinds of high-level jobs. And I think after a while, now that we've kind of fermented in that, we now understand that it's not going to replace the human brain. It's moved beyond the sci-fi narrative, and it's simply compressing time. And I think we've accepted that AI is merely a quantum leap in computing power, but not consciousness. So that's a much better picture to work with, because then we dismiss all the hype and we say, this is a great mule, a very high-powered mule, but it can do tremendous things. However, I don't think it will replace the human brain, and I think we've gone beyond that, and we've accepted that limitation. But that was a big pill to swallow at first when we started thinking about the future of AI.
All right, so take us through specifically how your AI analyst actually processes this real-time news and how that is different from the traditional processes that you used before using this analyst.
Yes, well, first off, we call it ASA. That's an acronym for AI Stock Analyst, ASA, clever name. And we built it as an internal stock analyst to replace large parts of what a traditional analyst does. I will tell you that if you put this laptop computer behind a curtain, you would not be able to tell the difference between it's being a human answering your questions or the actual AI that it is. And it's not a chatbot. It's a real-time synthesis engine for markets. So the difference between this and, say, the regular ChatGPT that we all are playing with is you have to ask ChatGPT questions. This is the reverse. It actually prompts us. It's continuously scrolling through all the data that's out there, just like a traditional research analyst does. I mean, let me just tell you, I've spent years in this business, and I started out as an analyst myself, and I know intimately the job is you're chained to your desk, you're scrolling through all this information in real time, and as the portfolio manager walks by, you try to get their attention and say, hey, there's just brand new news on stock ABC. This takes all that grunt work away from the analyst and really makes it far more interactive.
And how quickly can it go through that grunt work? Because I remember the days of waiting for earnings to come out, the earnings coming out, and me having to pour through to find every number, hope I wrote them all down correctly, and then go live with a report. What's the time from headline hitting news to actionable signal for ASA?
It processes news, filings, macro signals almost instantly. And then the other thing it does is it connects the dots across sectors in real time, and it flags risk and opportunity before the consensus even catches up. So it is faster than a human. Of course, there are still things that it cannot do, which is synthesize really large thoughts, and making connections between seemingly unrelated events, which I still think is a higher order intelligence. And so that still makes our jobs very, very important. But it is impressively fast, and once it signals something, you can then interact with it. You can say, well, Asa, tell me more about that, and we'll go into more detail, and then it will actually say, would you like to review the financials? And so we'll take you in different areas, and of course you can either negate that or go with it or move to different narratives. It's quite impressive. And I might add, this was all done for under $3,000. So let's just talk about margin improvement. You know, that is a fraction, a tiny fraction of what you would pay for a top-notch research analyst, say mid-level in their career. So we ourselves are experiencing that margin expansion that most manufacturing companies are hoping to experience as they adopt AI.
And Peter, I'd imagine that it's not a singular analyst, but probably more like double digit in terms of the workload that ACE is handling on a daily basis. But Wall Street has been heavily adopting AI. This is something that we're hearing from a lot of firms and a lot of advisors. What makes your system different?
I think the fact that it is truly interactional. So when you can have a conversation with this, and remember what I was saying, most of these chatbots, you initiate the conversation and then they passively answer, and they might say something at the end like, would you like to know more? The difference with this is we turn it on, we do our work in the office, and it is constantly prompting us by saying, we have another alert on URI stock. Would you like to hear what's going on? And you don't have to hear. You can say back to it, well, tell me, what is it regarding? And we'll say it's earnings surprise, or there's been a SEC filing. So the fact that it is more interactive, I think, does set it apart from most of the passive queries that most analysts are using now, where they'll just sit down at their computer, they'll ask a chat GPT a specific question, and they just get that one-way answer. This is far more expansionary in terms of having a conversation like you would with a real human.
I could have used ASA yesterday, Peter. I was looking and thought, what is happening with United Rentals right now? And I had to go through and source it myself. And having ASA say something's happening with URI would have been great for me.
Exactly,
really appreciate you joining us to talk about AI and its usefulness in the space and how we're seeing it transform, particularly in your office there. Peter, thanks for joining us today. Peter Andersen, the Chief Investment Officer and founder at Andersen Capital Management.